Patrick Williams? He didn't even start in college. We pick him at 4? We couldn't have traded down? Bro, we... Keep it in a buck with each other. Keep it in a buck with each other. We could have traded down to pick up this man. At 4?
Every year, NBA front offices light up the phones on draft night chasing the same dream. This guy is the next Giannis. This could be the next Kawhi. They see 7-foot wings with handles, explosive freaks who can guard 1 through 5, or lanky athletes with "if everything clicks" written all over their scouting reports, and then they throw lottery picks at them like confetti. But here's the brutal truth hitting us in 2026. GMs need to stop going into the draft and stop trying to find the next Giannis or Kawhi. Those guys are generational anomalies, 1 in a million freaks who combined insane raw tools with freakish work ethic, perfect landing spots, and years of elite development. Most teams don't have any of those, yet they keep betting premium capital on the same exact profile, raw bodies over proven basketball skills, and wondering why it keeps blowing up in their faces. The next Giannis or Kawhi obsession in the NBA needs to be studied. Giannis and Kawhi were exceptions, not templates. Teams now convince themselves that every long, raw athlete can learn basketball later, but that simply isn't how it works. They love drafting guys with tools, which just means tall, long reach, and athletic, and they love the 2 years away from being 2 years away archetype, and now it's just becoming an excuse, not a warning. The success rate of these bets are extremely low, but teams act like it's normal. And to be honest, I blame this on the short leashes NBA GMs get. When a new GM is hired to a struggling team, the ownership usually gives them 2 to 3 years to make something happen. For example, like making the playoffs, but it simply doesn't work that way. And as a result, these GMs draft these extremely raw, high-risk, high-reward prospects instead of the proven skill players that are left on the board. Tools versus skill. What actually translates? Athleticism gets you drafted, but skills keep you in the league. Basketball is a game of skill. Having athleticism is nice, of course, but skill is what will keep you in the door. An example of skills that translate immediately are shooting, ball handling, decision making, and overall feel for the game. And these things only come from experience, like playing basketball their whole life. Tools that don't guarantee anything are things such as wingspan, vertical frame, and other athleticism-like abilities. That's why we're seeing the rise of all these European hoopers, because the way they coach basketball overseas is completely skill-focused from day one. In Europe, they're taught the fundamentals from a young age, how to pass, how to shoot, how to dribble, no matter how tall they are. Whether you're 6 foot or 7 foot, you're learning the same core skills. A big man in Europe isn't just crashing the glass, he's working on his handle, his footwork, and his shooting stroke. They develop well-rounded basketball players, not just position fillers. In North America, it's a whole different story. If we see a kid with above average height, we immediately stick him at center and make him grab boards. That's his job. Box out, grab a board, maybe set a screen. We don't develop his guard skills because he's too tall for that. But then he stops growing at 6'3", and now you got a guy who should be playing point guard, but has the skill set of DeAndre Jordan. No shots at DeAndre, just an example. He never learned how to shoot consistently, never worked on his ball handling, and never developed that outside game. And that's the difference. European players come into the league fundamentally sound and skilled at every level. Meanwhile, we're still trying to teach grown men in their 20s how to shoot a basketball because we never prioritized it when they were young. In my opinion, if we were to send all these prospects that we find in places like Africa and Asia to Europe to develop instead of bringing them to North America, they'd become twice the players. Give them that European development system that focuses on skill and fundamentals regardless of size, and you see those incredibly gifted athletes reach their full potential. Instead, we bring them to North America and limit them by their height, turning potential superstars into role players. Another thing I want to talk about, which is the he'll learn how to shoot mentality, which is almost always false. We've seen so many of these prospects that have all the tools, size, reach, jump out the gym athleticism, but when it comes to putting the ball in the cup with their jumper, they simply can't get it done. All that potential, all those physical gifts, but the shooting touch simply isn't there. And in today's game, if you can't space the floor, if you can't make defenses respect you for the perimeter, those other tools only take you so far. To conclude, athleticism raises the ceiling of a player, but skills raises the floor. And the thing is, these teams keep drafting ceiling-only players with no floor. Now I want to talk about some recent draft examples of the tools trap. This is where the league keeps telling itself year after year, teams keep betting on big bodies and raw tools instead of guys who can actually hoop today. First example of this is Tawan Solon, snagged 6th overall by the Hornets in 2024 and is the purest example of this mindset. No real production in France, no polish on his game, just tall, mobile, and theoretically versatile. The entire evaluation was a projection. If the shot comes around, if the handle tightens, if the field improves. If wishes were fishes, we'd all swim in riches. But the question remains, why drop premium capital on a guy whose best case was always years from now? Second example of this is Bilal Coulibaly, drafted 7th in 2023 to the Wizards. Same archetype, but way better marketing. Elite length, defensive tools, high motor. Offense? Raw as hell. Limited creation, shaky jumper, and leading hard on his athleticism. The Wizards still bought into the defense first, offense later, and yeah, he settled in as a solid two-way piece, averaging around 10 and 5 on strong defense, but elite offense arriving at star level, still rare. It raises your floor as a high-end role player, but not as a franchise cornerstone. And the final example of this archetype is Patrick motherfucking Williams. Drafted 4th overall to the Bulls in 2020, he was drafted on frame, defensive upside, and shooting projection, but he barely played in college. And years later, in 2026, the leap has never fully materialized. And with that big old contract the Bulls gave him, he's low-key a liability. Even now in 2026, injuries keep popping up like recent ankle issues, and he's still more a role guy than star. So here's the question fans and teams should hammer. Why do skilled players keep sliding? Guys with real shot making, ball control, decision making, game feel valued less than raw athletes with theoretical upside. And why the blind confidence that these tools guys will magically develop shooting touch, processing speed, offensive creativity, skills history says improve slowly if at all. This isn't calling these guys busts, some are carving out solid careers, it's about draft logic. The league pretends development is a sure thing, and skill is optional. History screams the opposite. Athleticism gets you drafted high, skills decide if you stay in the door, like I said before. Every year, teams act shocked when the bet fizzles. Development is not magic. Okay, we just exposed the tools trap, drafting bodies and praying for upside. But the even bigger issue, teams act like development is some magic spell. Like you grab a raw athlete, toss him in the gym, let him play a few games, and boom, 2 years later he's a star. They'll hype we believe in our development staff, while cycling coaches every 2 years, shuffling rotations weekly, and giving raw kids zero structure. Just vibes and patience. Real development needs actual ingredients. Number 1, you need coaching continuity, no firings every offseason. Number 2, you need defined roles so young guys know exactly what to do. Number 3, confidence. Confidence is built through meaningful reps, not garbage time. And finally, you need a plan. Not just figure it out in a 55-loss season. Raw players thrive in structure, they drown in chaos. That's why the will develop him crumbles so often. If it were easy, every tanking team would have a Giannis-level success story. Spoiler, they don't. Most end up with role players at best, or straight busts. Look at teams that actually nail it. The Spurs, they've been doing this forever. Stable culture, clear expectations. They draft for skill, feel, and competitiveness, then build properly. Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, guys who didn't have freak tools, but grew into real pieces. Even with Wemby now, the foundation stays rock solid. Another example, the Raptors back in the day. They didn't luck into Fred VanVleet, Norm Powell, or OG. They had a system. Players knew their strengths, got reps, expanded, and grew. For example, they also sent these first-round picks in the G League, which is completely unheard of for any other team. Another example, Lakers turned undrafted gems like AR and Caruso into legit NBA contributors. Reeves is averaging a monster 26 points in stretches because they put him in spots to succeed, not because he was a 7-foot athlete. These aren't accidents. Development works when you know what you're building towards. The league keeps pretending the problem is just patience. No, the problem is drafting a body first and hoping basketball magically appears later. It fails because the environment isn't built for growth. Teams chase upside without having the infrastructure to unlock. Athleticism gets you in the door, but real development, that's earned through structure. And until teams get that, the cycle repeats.